What's up, guys? It says I'm live, but I'm trying to stream to Instagram right now. So there we go. All right, I think I got it. So, what's up, everybody? How we doing? So, thought today we'll go over a couple things. Um, First thing I'm gonna pull up is a video from Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur talking about Trump's polling and what it's looking right now, because it is not looking good for the polling numbers.
Look at this. I got four numbers across for you on this screen here. They are all second-term lows for the given pollster. What are we talking about? AP North, 26 points below water. NBC, 22 points below water. Yahoo YouGov, 20 points below water. Quinnipiac, 19 points below water. So we're ranging from negative 19 points all the way to negative 26 points. You know, Kate, there's this question that folks keep asking, you know, where is the floor for Donald Trump? And I'm not sure there is a floor, because if there is one, Donald Trump, at least in term number 2, has just fallen through it to another low level.
Well, President Donald Trump is once again setting new records for how low he can go when it comes to his own approval rating. Before I give you the details on that polling and what could be leading to it, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, so he's doing terrible on the economy, on tariffs, now bad on immigration, but there's a hidden issue that is the reason why those numbers are so disastrous. We're going to talk about that a little bit later after Annie gives you the facts about this. And as she does, look for how they're lying about the jobs numbers, because it's about to get much worse. Anna, tell us all about it.
Now, look, some of you might be thinking, well, look, Trump's approval rating was really bad in his first term. How could it potentially or possibly be worse in his second term? Is that really true? And the answer is yes. His approval rating, believe it or not, is actually worse this time around. And you're about to find out in this next clip.
22 points below water on average when you average all the pollsters from the last slide. That is actually lower. That is lower than he was at this point in term number 1, when he was 17 points below water. So he's doing 5 points worse, 5 points worse, and he's doing way worse than Joe Biden was doing at this point in his term number 1, when he was 13 points below water. So the bottom line is this: Donald Trump is setting new records for himself in term number 2, setting new records for himself compared to where he was at this point in term number 1, and he's doing worse than Joe Biden, which is, of course, the comparison that Donald Trump does not want to be, because we all know what happened to Joe Biden. His party lost the House in term number 1, that midterm elections, and of course, Joe Biden was not reelected to another term.
So, just in case you guys aren't getting it, we are getting slaughtered in the polls. 22 points below water is pretty bad. And with the midterms coming up, it is not looking good for the conservative right. And they're going to talk about it in a minute, but they only have themselves to blame for this. If they had followed through on what they promised in releasing the files and holding the people that needed to be held accountable, his numbers would be through the roof. Instead, is poll numbers are sinking faster than the Titanic. And I don't really know if it's going to be able to be turned around. A 22-point swing that's a pretty big swing. So Trump is going to have to do something massive to gain back the support of the people that voted for Trump just because they didn't want to put a Democrat in office. The MAGA base that has turned their back on the party for the way that they have handled the file release and the redactions and the lack of prosecutions. The Republicans are in a major hole right now, and I don't know what they do to get themselves out of it. So let me keep playing this video real quick, and I'll talk to you guys about it.
Now, if you're wondering, well, what's the cause of all this? Is it just the Epstein cover-up? I'm sure that plays a role in it. But if you ask Americans in the polling, they're actually pretty clear. They consistently rank the economy as their top issue. And so we just got a very troubling insight into how our economy is doing. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about here, it turns out the official count of payroll jobs at the end of 2025 was revised downward by more than 1 million last Wednesday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Sorry. So, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the way they work, they are constantly playing catch up and constantly revising their numbers based off information that comes in after their numbers are released. For the Bureau of Labor Statistics to revise their report by more than 1 million jobs it's not bad, it's catastrophic. Because that means the labor market is not doing as good as the Trump administration thought it was. It means that inflation is not going to be going down as fast as they thought it was. It means that people on government assistance will be much higher than the administration was planning. And none of these numbers are good for the administration. And Anna talks about the people being polled saying the economy is the number one factor. For a lot of former Trump supporters, I am going to disagree. I am going to say that the complete mishandling of the Epstein files, the redactions, the lack of accountability, Pam Bondi's mental breakdown in front of Congress, that is probably the driving factor for most of the base to not support the administration. I could be wrong. I mean, the economy is obviously not doing well. Inflation is obviously an issue for everybody except the political class, because they're not the ones going to the grocery store and trying to buy groceries for a family. That they have people that go to the grocery stores for them and charge it to their credit card, and they just pay the bill because that's the kind of money that these people have. The difference between Main Street and Wall Street is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the longer we go on like this, the middle class is becoming smaller and smaller, because it is driving more and more people into the lower economic class. And it's unless something changes and drastically, the middle class is on its way to getting wiped out. And you are going to be facing a situation to where the economic system is literally going to be based on the haves and the have-nots. And I can assure you that anybody sitting in Congress or the Senate is not in the have-not class. But anybody that is trying to support a family, trying to raise kids, trying to hold down a job, trying to pay their mortgage, pay their rent, pay their insurance, pay their health care, these people are all struggling. I said in one of my other videos, I make decent money at my job. And it is enough for me to pay my bills and get the essentials, and I am lucky if I am able to set 50, $100 aside. And by the end of the month, some kind of issue pops up to where that money is getting spent on something anyway. Whether it's unexpected bills, car repairs, health insurance premiums, co-pays, whatever. It's becoming harder and harder and harder for the average American to get ahead. Now, why is that? That is because, hold on, let me see if I could pull up a chart that would make you understand why inflation is the way it is. Trying to find one that goes up to 2025. Give me a second here. Sorry, guys. The downfalls of doing things live. Okay, so let me stop sharing the screen and share the screen. Actually, no, this isn't the one I wanted to share. I wanted to share screen. Okay. So this chart right here from 1967 through December 20th, 2023 shows you the M2 money supply, which is the amount of currency in circulation, that's hard money, compared to the rise of the S&P 500. And as you can see, starting in 73 all the way up to, let's say, 2020, 2021. The S&P follows the money supply. Why does this happen? Because of inflation. So as more money gets printed, the value of the dollar goes down, prices go up. But prices for the middle class, when the prices for the middle class go up, it's things like groceries and healthcare and childcare and your bills, health insurance premiums, copays. So the middle class is constantly paying more because the value of the dollar is going down. But when it comes to the political class, which is the asset holders and entities like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, due to inflation, the assets that they have are constantly increasing in value. So if you have assets, the money printer being turned on is not necessarily a bad thing, because you have things that will go up in value that you are able to use as collateral to the banks to get loans and financing and whatever else you need. But the middle class is struggling with that inflation on the ground level. So, like I said, groceries, medical bills, insurance, copays, car insurance, phone bills, everything. Everything is going up in price for the middle class. Which is why that divide is getting bigger and bigger. Because it is getting harder and harder for the middle class to acquire wealth to buy those assets. But the only way to keep this economy going is to print money. Because if they don't print money, the economy will collapse. So they have gotten themselves into such a financial disaster that they're left with the choice of either printing money, which will drive up inflation, drive up home prices, drive up the prices at the grocery store, drive up your bills, your health care, childcare, everything will go up. But if they choose not to print, that's when the economy will collapse. So they are forced now to turn on the money printer and start printing money again. So all the promises of inflation going down and the affordability crisis being a Democrat hoax. There's been an affordability crisis since they decided to come off the gold standard and basically made paper money worth nothing. And since they made our paper money worth nothing, the only thing backing the US dollar was basically the American military. And America's ability to do whatever it wanted on the political stage and use its military might to control monetary policy. Except we're reaching a point now where that is no longer an option. If anybody has been tracking what's been going on in the silver market, the spot price for silver in the United States is somewhere around $77-$78. On the London and Singapore exchanges, it's trading, well, it was trading at anywhere between $120 and $180 an ounce. Now, why was that happening? Well, JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon had and still do have, an $8 billion short position on silver that they are very close to the government stepping in and them getting margin called. And if you don't know what that means those silver shorts that they were betting on the price to go down, since the price went up so much, they have to sell those contracts at the spot price. So if they shorted silver at $13 and the price is $77, you can see what kind of a loss that is. Now, China saw this was happening. And what China did was completely strangle the supply lines on silver. They cut down on production, they cut down on refining, and they cut down on what do you call it? The transfer and shipment of silver. So by them doing that, it caused the price of silver on the London and Singapore exchanges to absolutely skyrocket, creating a very dangerous problem for JP Morgan. Because if assets in one side of the world are trading for almost double than they are in America, then something is seriously broken. Enough so for JP Morgan to send the heads of their firm to Singapore to try to source silver, physical silver, for them to not take such extreme losses on their short positions. So, that was a little quick lesson in what's been going on in the metals market. It's been kind of crazy to watch because the metal market is usually not this volatile, and it's been kind of crazy. It's been kind of crazy to watch. So, let me remove this and go back to that. Stop share, add screen. Let's go back to Trump's polling. Let's finish this video.
By the way, I wanted to double check and make sure that was the case. I went to the actual BLS report, and it is true. Previously, the agency estimated that payroll jobs totaled 159,526,000 in December. Now it says that number is 158,497,000. So they revised the jobs numbers by roughly 1 million last year. So there's more. The federal government had previously claimed that the United States added over 400,000 jobs in the year 2025, meaning the net number of jobs that have been added to the economy. But last week, the government slashed that estimate. Now, the government is claiming that the U.S. added just shy of 200,000 jobs last year. In other words, they revised their estimate downward by over 50%. And what's even more concerning here, Cenk, is that the U.S. is only consistently adding jobs in one sector, and that's the healthcare sector. That's due to the fact that our population is aging. As you age, obviously, you need more healthcare. And so there is high demand for healthcare related jobs right now. And hiring has all but frozen throughout the rest of the economy. So that's what the real concern here is. Let's take a quick look at this graph that was put together by Indeed Hiring Lab. So the graph represents the number of jobs added to the U.S. economy per month. Each of the blue vertical lines represents 1 month. So the colored horizontal lines portray the yearly average of jobs added per month. And as you can see, job growth has been slowing for quite some time now. It's not like this started with Trump, but it seems to have accelerated under Trump. So job growth has been slowing since 2022. But even up until 2024, the U.S. was adding over 100,000 jobs per month. However, in 2025, the U.S. added just 15,000 jobs per month on average. So unsurprisingly, a lot of Americans are feeling the economic burn right now, not only when it comes to the job market, but also in regard to the cost of things. Costs have not gone down. Inflation is still a problem. And that's a big issue when you consider the fact that wages have not kept up with inflation and people are finding it harder to find gainful employment. So curious what you think about all of this, Jake.
Scribe is how 4 million people turn processes into step-by-step guides. The hardest part of any job, I don't care where you work, is answering the same questions over and over. You're going to want to see this. That's why there's Scribe. Go to scribehal.com. Click capture, do the task once, and Scribe makes a step-by-step guide you can share automatically. You ever walk someone through a giant process and know they'll forget half of it? Well, Scribe puts everything they need to know. Instructions, pictures, videos, all in one page. So the next time they ask, you can send them the link. I know what you're thinking, they still click the wrong thing half the time. Well, check this out. Scribe will literally guide them through it, click by click. Warning, they're going to think you're a genius and ask how you did it. Just say Scribe. Scribe instantly turns
Okay, so this next person that I am going to put on is this is Zachary Loft. He is a real estate agent in Delaware, and if you don't follow Zach, you should, because if you like how Ian Carroll explains things, you will absolutely love how Zachary explains things. So I'm gonna play this and just give you an idea of why I am such a fan of his and why he is one of my biggest inspirations for making content. How do I unmute this? Oh, I don't have oh, there it is. Here we go.
I personally care about Epstein. You don't have to care about Epstein, but you know why I personally care about Epstein? Is because there's been so many things that I've been able to track and find out about that connect back in full congruence with what I had already thought, theorized, or suspected. Everything lines up. When I look at Jeffrey Epstein, and the suspicion is that he is funded or organized by some family, some bloodline, maybe the Rothschild family, which funded both sides in the Napoleonic War, had their hands all in the War of 1812, not to mention...
Oh no, what did I do?
You know why I care about Epstein? You know why I personally care about Epstein? You don't have to care about Epstein, but you know why I personally care about Epstein? Is because there's been so many things that I've been able to track and dive deep on and find out about that connect back in full congruence with what I had already thought, theorized, or suspected. Everything lines up. When I look at Jeffrey Epstein, and the suspicion is that he is funded or organized by some family, some bloodline, maybe the Rothschild family, which funded both sides in the Napoleonic War, had their hands all in the War of 1812, not to mention there was this document called the Balfour Declaration, which was written out from the British Empire to form the State of Israel as we know today. And you know who it was signed to? a Rothschild. And here's why I care about Epstein. Because when I hear about Epstein, my head rings Rothschild. And with the most recent release, what do we get? We get 7 different emails. 7 different emails, not one. 7 different emails where the man basically says, yes, I am being funded by the Rothschild. By the way, Alan Dershowitz, his lawyer, Epstein's lawyer, also Trump's close associate, said twice live. It seemed both times as he did it, it kind of felt like it slipped. Said, you know, the one says, are you still representing Mr. Epstein by chance? And he says, no, he's dead. No. Listen, I was introduced to him by a lady Rothschild. He said that twice. And then that lady Rothschild, that's Jay Rothschild, he's emailing her. So why do I care about this? Because the Rothschilds, right, hear me, De Beers Diamonds, right, central banking, Federal Reserve, 1910 Jekyll Island meeting. You know, you want to look at who tried to fund our side of the Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln said nah to, and then Abraham Lincoln said nah to life. He died. He didn't actually die from the gunshot. He died a couple days later from he succumbed to the wounds. It was actually, we had today's medical facilities, probably wouldn't have died. But also guns were not as good as they are now. Either way, you want to know why I care about Epstein? Because here's the deal, guys. The next Federal Reserve chair, I follow the Federal Reserve. I just want to follow the housing market. I want to understand the economy, but here we are. The next chair of the Federal Reserve is going to be a man by the name of Kevin Warsh. Kevin Warsh's wife, his wifey, wifed up, boo, is Jane Lauder. Jane Lauder is the heiress to the Estee Lauder fortune. Heiress. Who's current Lord? Current Lord is Ron Lauder. Who's Ron Lauder? Friend of Trump. He's the reason we're going to Greenland. I'll put all that to the side. Ron Lauder and Epstein, why do you care so much about Epstein? Met 4 different times. After the 4th meeting, Jeffrey's admin hits him up and says, hey, Jeff wants your last 2 years of tax statements, your finances, your accountant's contact information, and your will and testament. Okay? Hope lunch was good. Normal things to do after lunch, right? So they were close. Bought art from each other through Sublime Art LLC, December 12th, 2016. Sold for $150,000 to a foundation under the name of what? Under the name of what? The Ron Lauder Foundation. Hear me. Hear me. I care about Epstein because he's connected to every facet of what I follow. You keep mentioning Israel. It's not Israel. It's not Jews. It's not all Jewish people. It's not a religion. It's not even where someone came from. I'm focused on the Israeli government. Why? Because of BB. Benjamin Netanyahu. Big Yahoo. Just out of Philadelphia. Born and raised. Literally played soccer most of his days. In middle school, played for one of our middle school teams before leaving for the Yom Kippur War of 74. I think he was 17. Correct me if I'm wrong. Came back to America and works within the U.S. Embassy pretty quickly, within a couple decades. New Reagan, new Carter, new Clinton, new Bush. We know he knows them all today now. From Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump, we know that. But listen, works within the embassy as an ambassador back to Israel in the U.S. Embassy. And he meets this individual who ends up funding, hear this, they meet in the 80s. And you want to know who made Bibi Netanyahu a thing? They meet in the 80s, and then by 1996, this man hires a campaign manager for Bibi Netanyahu, an American conservative executive campaign manager who's known to have success, hires him for him, says, yo, come work for us to get Bibi in office, then funds and lobbies his campaign efforts so people can know the opposing party is wrong. And by the way, Bibi's opponents assassinated, and the widow left behind from the assassination said, I think Bibi had something to do with it. Live on camera. I wonder what she said behind closed doors. Okay, hear me. This is why I care about Epstein. Epstein and Bibi were talking. Epstein and Bibi were talking. But that's only one layer of connection. Who's the person, by the way, though, that funded Bibi Netanyahu, gave him his campaign manager, and then served on his board of peace for Israel and Syria? Who's the person who's fighting the anti-Semitism movement heavy, and pushing for more freedom of speech to be ripped away so that less hatred can be thrown their way? What are they doing to distract us with red versus blue so they can chase more green? Who funded this man that funded and orchestrated the genocide that happened last year and is seemingly ongoing through a peace agreement? People are still being killed. Which step of the plan are we on of the 13 or so points? Maybe it's 21. 9 plus 10. The reason I care about Epstein is because the man that he was connected to, Ron Lauder, the Estee Lauder cosmetics brand, Lord, his son-in-law, he's going to be the Fed Reserve chairman. He's going to have the reins to the free market economy. That guy, the one who's suggested and officially now, I guess, carried out because he's investing in Greenland. That's fishy. With an LLC he made out of Delaware back in May that he's using now. Actually, it was April. It was April 22nd, 2025. The LLC is Greenland Development Partners LLC. You can search it on Delaware corporate website. And then he purchases shares in a Greenland water bank in November. I wonder why. Because the very man who's orchestrating the takeover of Greenland is the very buddy, donor, recipient man. But the craziest part is Ron Lauder is also the guy that met Bibi Netanyahu at the U.S. Embassy and funded Bibi Netanyahu. He created Bibi Netanyahu. And you wonder where the crosses financially tie over, and then you look at places like Lex Wexner, who's the Victoria's Secret owner, who super connected to Epstein, super connected to Ron, was the guy that gave Epstein his Manhattan home, one of the most expensive homes in Manhattan. It's worth over $70 million right now. Gave it to Epstein for $1. Les Wexner created the group called the Mega Group for Epstein in 91. And guess who was a member? Ron Lauder. And Steven Spielberg. Weird. I care about this because the same exact reason they're not going to do anything about Epstein is the same exact reason over the last 40 years the economy's been ripped out from under you. The same exact reason in 2023 the tide shifted towards you never being able to afford a home and healthcare looking like more of a luxury. The very things that affected the non-college grad, normal everyday airmen and airwomen in the Air Force, people coming in here through the University of Delaware that just wanted to buy a house. I could make it happen. 40 grand, we can make it happen. 150 grand home, we can make it happen. Now it's 400K. And I started to have questions. And here we are today. I'm going to keep making connections. I'm going to keep finding out more. And I'm going to keep going deeper. And I'm going to keep going deeper. And I'm going to find out everything that I can because it's affecting everybody I know. And I don't like it. It's not my favorite. Never been. I can tell anybody. You know me. Big T. Listen. Just keep going. Let your light shine. I love you. I think you're an incredible person. You're worth being on this earth. You're worth being who you are. I hope you have a life of fulfillment and a life of happiness with you and the people that love you. And I hope that you show more love than you receive so that the world can go on being a better place as you leave it behind. And if everyone does that skill, we'll live in a beautiful world. Love you. And Christ is King. See you.
So, if you're not familiar with Zach Regoft, his Instagram is zachary.loft. We're gonna how can I X out of this fucking thing?
He didn't actually die from.
How do I close this? What do I do here? Why can't I get rid of this? There we go. So, let's see. Guys want to talk about the housing market? He does that too.
Let's fix the housing market before 2028 with a few ideas I'd like to present to you. If you don't have time right now, hit favorite, hit right here to exit. Let's walk through first. What's the problem and what's the answer? In order to do that, we have to understand and set up the problem. The S stands for supply, the E stands for expenses, and the T stands for together. For supply, we have to understand the real problem here. There's debate as to whether or not we are in a supply crisis or whether or not we have ample supply. The quick answer is we absolutely do not have enough supply. And before you come after me and saying, well, Zach, homes are sitting in my area, let's put it in perspective. Right now, the day on market, median-wise in America, is about 45 days. In a typical buyer's market, we're looking usually at 80 to 100 days, meaning that's how long the average home will sit on the market before it inevitably sells, for usually about 90% of its list price. So hear me, we are still in a seller's market, but hear me right quick, we don't have enough sellers, and here's some proof. This is the Census Bureau document, and we can see post-crash, there was a point in 2008 when we saw over 4 million homes on the market. Okay, for perspective, today we have just over 1 million. So right now we can see 4x, even though slightly lower before the prices started dropping, 4x versus 1 million. But there's a distinct point I want to make here, because there are enough homes. So for the arguers of there is enough inventory, you are partially correct. And for those that say we are in a supply crisis, overarchingly, Zillow, Redfin, all the economists would agree we need 4 to 4.5 million homes more to satisfy the current demand. But there's a deeper problem, because if we look at the Census Bureau to see how many of the 4 million homes were new construction, it was just over 500,000. I want you to guess today how many of our million homes on the market are new construction. Almost the exact same number. So what this means is there are enough homes out there to be bought that are sitting on the market, but a large majority, a much larger share than the 12% share it had in or around 2008, now sits at more than 50% of our market's inventory. It means we simply don't have regular everyday people selling their homes. It's mainly just investors. Number 2, I'm going to speed this up. Expenses. That's our second problem. Expenses, not meaning your expenses. We'll get to that. It's expensive to freaking build. You know, we have high rates right now for everything. Credit cards, health insurance. You got to take out a loan for your health insurance now. Your mortgage, your car, it's all expensive. But guess where it's also expensive? It's also expensive for the land developer to take out the loan for the giant acreage needed for the big neighborhood, to put in the concrete, for the sidewalks, the asphalt, for the roads and the light poles and the bills. You think they just pay for it all in cash? They finance it. They finance it. And so when rates are up for them too, making it more expensive to develop land. And also the land is more expensive. But let's get to you. Together. S-E-T. Supply, expenses, together. Now listen, if wages right now that are sitting at $83,000 a household, you know, only up from about 79,000 like just a couple years ago. If you just looked at that spread, that in itself isn't a problem, that you make $83,000 a household. That by itself is not a problem. It is also not by itself a problem when home prices go up and grocery cart prices go up and the cost of everything from Wi-Fi to a potato goes up. That by itself isn't the problem. But when you combine the two together, the low wages mixed with the high cost of acquiring an asset and just living day to day, now you have a wage crisis. And we are in a wage crisis, which is bleeding down into becoming a housing affordability crisis that we've been in. So what's the solution? Starting at minute 4, I'll put that in the description. Solutions. We got to talk about bells, okay? Ban, eliminate, ladder, local, standard. Let's break this down. Ban corporate investors. Zach, Trump already said he's going to stop these institutional investors. Different word. Different word, not institutional. That's defined by anybody that owns more than 1,000 units, a company, corporation, bank. Some define it as 100, most say 1,000. I'm saying you can no longer buy a home without a social security number, which will make it a lot harder for foreign buyers, make it a lot harder for illegal immigrants, and it'll make it a lot harder for these big old corporations that want to say, Ma, Pa, I want my 4th rental. I'm going to go get a new LLC for like $150. very cheap. You can go into, look, Delaware Incorporate Myself, and you'll find a limited liability corporation creation page where you can give it a name, pay $150 or so, and all of a sudden you can now go buy assets as 123 Banana Man. Meanwhile, it's really Blackstone. You catch my drift? So we need to get rid of the corporate buying opportunity. I'm not saying, by the way, investors, mom and pops out there, that you can't have it in an LLC. You can move it to the LLC once you've bought it with your social. That way we can actually track an accountability, we can actually track and hold accountable a cap on the amount of investments that can be held. And that's a different discussion because we need to cap it, but we can't cap it as long as people can still buy properties as ghosts with LLC. Sorry, I hit the stop button. E, eliminate. So we got ban, eliminate, ladder, local, standardize. Eliminate capital gains. What's capital gains? When an asset goes up in price over a certain period of time and you sell it, you have to pay an additional tax on the difference between what you bought it for versus what you sold it for. It's called capital gains. Doesn't apply to all, but applies to a lot that bought in around 2020, 2021, 2022, and then shoom, price point. But they can't access that wealth. Well, I propose we drop the capital gains requirement, saving 25, 30% of their returns from going to the big Uncle Sam. And instead, you can go null on that box as long as you sell it to somebody that is a first-time home buyer. They've never owned real estate before. So if you can happen to offload some of those investment properties, get a little bit more liquidity in your life. You can finally divorce your husband you've been trying to get away from for the last 2.5 years, but neither of you can afford to sell. If you were to eliminate this barrier of the tax, it could incentivize a lot more supply. But Zach, we need to actually create more money out of this. So how do we do that? Ladder, BEL. So we could eliminate corporate gains, but simultaneously for investors looking to buy, you're going to pay an investor fee. Simple, 1%, 1% of the total price. If you own 10 properties, 3% of the total price. You own over 100, 5% of the total price. You may say, Dak, they're just going to pay that. They're just going to pay that. Why is that going to hurt them? Because that tax can go toward a first-time home buyer fund that can pay for the closing costs or down payment assistance of the first-time home buyer. It can be run by the state, so it doesn't have to make it to Washington. So the more investors that are piling in, simultaneously, the more we're funding first-time home buyers. And if supply is being created based off of capital gains not being a problem anymore, now we're looking at a world where we're limiting the demand of the investor, building up the opportunity of a first-time buyer, and incentivizing the seller. Remember, our first problem was supply and demand. That's the core problem. 4, local. So we got ban, eliminate, ladder, and now local. We need local change. This is the most unrealistic. It might be simple, but unrealistic because zoning holds back so much. So much. Did you know 75% of our American dirt is single-family zoning right now? That's a problem. We need to be able to build up. We need to be able to build more creatively. 3D homes, modern modular homes are actually pretty snazzy. We can have container homes, tiny homes, but zoning makes it so difficult. For example, my home. If I were to steamroll my home down tomorrow, I'd have to build a home that has at least 2 bathrooms and 1,600 square feet. Otherwise, it's against my deed, against my zoning restrictions. I cannot do it. So we need to get local and shift and change the way the racist and inherently discriminatory zoning laws that were passed before a black man could even get a mortgage, mostly. We need to shift the system. So we need to get local to do that. And that also gets down to like infrastructural costs that they use to fix streets and schools and pipes and things of that nature. A lot of the regulatory costs really haunt the builders. S, standard. A standard buy down. Follow me real fast. Okay, when you get a mortgage and you get like up to the closing table and you're like, I have to pay 6%. 6%. How could I avoid this? You could do an adjustable rate. Don't suggest it. But what if you could pay down your rate? Well, did you know you already can? Normally, if you pay down 1 point of your mortgage, so like $400K, that's $4,000. Follow me. If you were to pay down 1 point, you would pay down a point on your mortgage interest as well, meaning you wouldn't get the 6%. Now you could get the 5% for the rest of the loan. It's not adjustable. It's flat. What if for every first-time home buyer in America, we sponsor $10,000 worth of a standard 3% buy down, finally giving demand specifically to the first-time home buyer. We've already taken it away from investors with other things we talked about. Now we add upward pressure to the first-time buyer by saying, here is a standard buy down. We're not handing you money for a down payment necessarily. You don't have to utilize these closing cost assistance. You can just simply go and buy it yourself, but you now have the ability to afford more. Your dollar goes farther because you have a lower interest rate. Instead of a 6, now you have a 3. How does that sound? $200, $300, maybe even $400 off of what you'd normally have at the standard rate. The investors can pay those. The boomers can pay those. The retirees, relocators can pay those. But we need to strengthen our first-time homebuyer demand, lower investor demand, provide not just overarching building supply. We have that. It's growing. It's already at 2008-like levels. We need to get supply from regular everyday people, more velocity in the market to create and untether this frozen housing market that we are sitting in. Those are just my proposals. I'm in a parking lot. What do I know? I gotta go to Aldi. That's why I'm here. Let's fix the housing market before 2028 with a...
So, that right there is Zachary Loft. He is probably one of the best creators on Instagram. He is no longer on TikTok for understandable reasons. But if you are interested in anything having to do with the Federal Reserve, financial markets, housing markets, or the Easting list, I suggest you give him a follow. I have messaged him a couple times. I've talked to him. He is an awesome dude. And him and Ian Carroll are 100% my inspirations for making content like this. And Charlie Kirk is 100% my inspiration for deciding to use my voice. Because that man was taken away from us in front of the entire world on social media for using his voice. And the day that happened, I made a promise to myself that since my voice is the only thing that I have that can probably make a difference, I will start using my voice, and I will continue to use my voice, and I will continue to post. I will continue to piss both sides of the aisle off, because I am not a Democrat. I am no longer calling myself a Republican. I am putting myself in the category of America First. As you can tell by the channel name, let me put this on the screen. The Democrats and the Republicans care nothing about inflation, nothing about fixing healthcare, nothing about making lives for the American people better. And until we put people in office that truly care about us, nothing is going to change. And that is not going to start at the congressional level. That is going to start at the local level. If you are a good person with a heart that cares about your neighbor, and you have the means, run for office. Run for office and contact people like me. Contact people like Ian Carroll. Contact people like Zach. Contact people that are out here trying to spread the message that this is a bipartisan issue, that it does not matter who we put in office. The needs of the American people will never be taken care of. And Clint from Liberty Lockdown, I've said it before, he had the best analogy. It's like America is a sinking ship, and the political class is doing everything they can to loot what they can before the ship sinks. And our job as people that can see what's going on and are creating platforms and are getting in front of a camera and talking to 5 people or 50,000 people. We are the ones that are fighting for true change in this country. It is not liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. It is the political class against the American people. It is the elites versus the plebs. And it's getting old. And not only is it getting old, but it's getting to a point where we are not going to be able to vote our way out of this. Because both sides of the aisle, whether the Republicans or the Democrats want to admit it, both sides of the aisle are compromised. You notice how the Republicans are using the files as talking points against the Dems, and the Dems are using the files as talking points against the Republicans. Well, the only way that works is if they're all in the files. And they are all in the files. So we need to put regular Americans in office. We need to vote out these career politicians that have been in Congress for 20 and 30 years, and the only thing they have done is enrich themselves. It's time for a new movement in this country. It is time for an America First movement. And if the Republicans really think that putting J.D. Vance on the ticket is the right thing to do, then they have lost touch with reality. Because after Charlie's demise, and the way Erica Kirk spoke about JD, compared him to her late husband, we are already getting JD Vance shoved down our throat as the Republican candidate for 28. And if you don't know anything about JD and JD's history, JD is extremely tied to Peter Thiel. The man that is responsible for Palantir and installing a surveillance state in this country. And he's a man that is obsessed with the Antichrist. So if you want that guy's puppet, J.D. Vance, in office, then by all means. Let me I also wanted to look something up real quick. I think you guys will like this. Give me a second. So if you guys don't remember, in 2016, before JD ran for Senate in Ohio, JD was a never Trumper. And I have a montage of JD talking shit about President Trump. And everybody knows how Trump holds grudges. So, when you have J.D. Vance comparing Trump to the modern day Hitler in 2016, you tell me how he set that aside and allowed him to be his running mate. I'm sure that Peter Thiel and Peter Thiel's money and Palantir had nothing to do with that, right? What does Ian want to say? But what do I know? I'm just a conspiracy theorist. Well, let's listen to what JD had to say.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. It makes you think that at a fundamental level, this is sort of a he said, she said, right? And at the end of the day, do you believe Donald Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe that woman on that tape?
I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
Like I said, I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
Definitely, there is definitely an element of Donald Trump support that has its basis in racism or xenophobia. I think there's a chance, if I feel like Trump has a really good chance of winning, that I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. I think that...
Did you hear what he just said? That if he thought that there was a good chance of Donald Trump winning the 2016 election, that he was going to cross party lines and vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, you can't tell me that Donald Trump has never seen these clips, because we know how he is on social media. So you tell me how Trump looked, put all this aside and allowed JD to become his running mate. Make it make sense.
I'm gonna vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
I know he loves this country. I know he loves the state of Ohio, and I know he loves Bernie Moreno. Let's help Donald Trump out, elect Bernie Moreno, and elect Donald Trump in 2024. God bless you, sir.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
Let's go to Google real quick. In case you guys didn't know, Iran decided to close the Strait of Hormuz. CNBC. Iranian state media on Tuesday reported a partial and temporary closure of the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not paying for this. Get out of here. Widely considered one of the world's most important oil choke points. It comes as the U.S. and Iran hold nuclear talks in the Swiss city of Geneva. Oil prices were last seen trading lower, erasing earlier gains as the talks concluded. Iran partially closed the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz on Tuesday, Strait media reporting, citing security precautions as Tehran's Revolutionary Guard conducts military drills in the waterway. It comes as the U.S. and Iran hold talks in the Swiss city of Geneva, seeking to resolve ongoing disputes over Tehran's nuclear program. It marks the first time Iran has shut parts of the Strait of Hormuz, a major international waterway that links crude producers in the Middle East with key markets across the globe, since U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Tehran with military action in January. Located in the Gulf between Oman and Iran, the strait is recognized as one of the world's most important oil choke points. About 13 million barrels of crude oil transited the Strait of Hormuz in 2025, accounting for roughly 31% of global seaborne crude flows. Well, what is the real reason that they decided to shut the Strait of Hormuz? I think this probably has a little bit more to do with it, but I could be wrong. Carrier strike groups. The USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group, including guided missile destroyers, are already in the area, specifically reported near the Gulf of Oman. The USS General Gerald R. Ford is en route, marking a significant increase in firepower. The deployment aims to pressure Iran regarding its nuclear program and regional activities. The presence of these vessels is part of a broader, massive fleet with nearly one-third of the U.S.'s active Navy fleet involved in the region. The USS General Ford's deployment is being extended, with Carrier undergoing an unusually long 8-month deployment, postponing scheduled maintenance. Iran has warned against American aggression, with officials suggesting the ability to strike back. The situation is characterized as high tension, with BBC Verify tracking a significant increase in U.S. destroyers, combat ships, and fighter jets in the region. The U.S. sending the world's biggest aircraft carrier to the Middle East. Well, if I had to guess, Mr. No New Wars is stacking the deck against Iran. And if I had to guess, we will be bombing them very soon. And Trump also said recently USA Today. Iranian regime change would be the best thing, Trump says. President Donald Trump backed regime change as the best option in Iran as the United States continues to move military assets in the Middle East. Seems like that would be the best thing that could happen, the president said February 13th when he was asked if he wants a regime change in Iran. Trump was speaking after a military event at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. For 47 years, they've been talking and talking and talking, Trump said. In the meantime, we've lost a lot of lives while they talk. Legs get blown off, arms get blown off, faces get blown off. We've been going on for a long time. Earlier in the day, Trump also commented on U.S. aircraft carrier currently being moved into the region to join other military assets that have been moved there in the recent weeks. In case we don't make a deal, we'll need it, Trump said. If we need it, we'll have it ready. I have a feeling that they're not going to make a deal. I have a feeling that there is no intention to make a deal. And I have a feeling that you don't move 1/3 of the world's largest and most powerful and capable navy into the region unless you're planning on using them. So I would keep your eyes peeled to news coming out of Iran and news coming out of Switzerland about how the talks are going, because Trump said it himself, if the talks don't go well, we'll need all the firepower that we have there. So, Mr. No New Wars backing out on another promise. Another promise that he made to his voters and he made to the base. He is going back on. And this war isn't even for us. Because despite the fact that Israel, even if Iran had a nuclear weapon, they don't have a delivery device to attack the United States. If Iran had nuclear capabilities, I'm pretty sure they would have blown our greatest ally off the map by now. But for some reason they haven't. So, sounds like we're getting fed more bullshit from this administration, which is a daily occurrence at this point. And I guess we'll see what happens. But I'll tell you what, if Trump's 26 point under in the polls now, how do you think he's going to be polling if we go to war with Iran? It is not looking good for the Republicans at all. And to be perfectly honest, not that I want the libtards in office, but the only way we hold these people accountable is by not putting them back in office. And primarying every single person that voted to not release the files, that was part of redacting the files. Kash Patel It is now proven, lied to Congress and the American people under oath. Pam Bondi, it is now proven, lied to the American people and Congress under oath. Both of them should be arrested. Both of them should be charged. Both of them need to go. And the only way Trump saves his reputation and possibly saves the midterms is to release all the files unredacted and go scorched earth on anybody that's named as any kind of co-conspirator. But you and me both know that that's never going to happen. And it is a goddamn shame. Because if we are the type of country that lets these people walk free because of the amount of money that they have and the status that they hold, the people that did these crimes to girls as young as 9 years old, then we have a bigger problem in this country than any of us realize. And I will continue to do my part to try to wake people up. Because if people don't wake up, we are in for a world of hurt. Whether it be economically, militarily, we're in for a long couple years with the rest of this administration. And when you think about it, they've only been in office for a year, and all of this has gone on. What do you think the next 3 years is going to bring? You think it's going to get any better? I don't. I definitely don't. But maybe I'm wrong. I'm just a guy on the internet that talks about what he believes in. And I will end it with one of my favorite quotes. And it is from Charlie Kirk. And it is, always keep asking questions because it is the only thing that keeps us free. So with that, I am signing off, unless I have another reason to make another video later tonight. Everybody subscribe to Zachary Loft on Instagram. If you don't follow Baron Coleman, follow Baron, follow Ian Carroll, follow Ian Went, follow Bobby Sauce, follow Ian Smith, follow James Fishback. Anybody that's pushing for an American First agenda. Those are the people that we want in office and in power. Not people that have dual loyalty and are bought out by donors. It's time for regular people to get in office and get these people the fuck out. So, with that, everybody have a good night. I might be on later. I might not. But yeah, have a good night.